Blended Podcasts. Brought to you by Blended Audio.
Welcome back.
No, man, you can do better than that. Come.
Welcome back.
No. Welcome back.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Hang on.
Come.
Welcome back. No. That was.
All right, but now we get the idea.
Oh, we're back.
Yeah.
Back again. Hey guys. We are back in studio with SoundVaaibs, and this is one of your hosts. Very
lethargic today.
Very lethargic Sunday afternoon in bright sunny Cape Town, and it's so lovely outside, and we're inside, and it's so sunny and
I don't know,
and bright
and sunny. I do agree with.
Don't
but
you?
The lovely,
you do.
Yeah, but the lovely I don't quite agree with. I'm a winter person.
Are you a winter baby?
Yeah. This
okay.
weather kills me. So I'm quite happy with the air-conditioned cube that we find ourselves in.
I like aircon. Aircons are great.
Yeah.
So, that's Paddy McD, as you've probably gathered from the last 20 plus.
Where are we now? We're 24 now.
20. Yeah, dude.
Producer, 24.
24. Part 3.
Yeah.
24.3 FM. No. Today we are continuing the discussion of band relationships and dynamics and things. And we were touching on last week on a whole variety of complexities involving such dynamics.
Layers and layers and layers.
Like an onion or an ogre.
Yeah.
Layers and layers and layers and layers.
Yeah.
And the one thing that we should touch on this week is how often are you going to check up on your progress, on your collective progress in your project? Because I think it's very, very important part of the communication process is how often are you really keeping everyone in the loop? How often are you keeping things afloat?
Yeah. But I think there's an important distinction right here.
You're a distinction.
Yeah, I know. Are we speaking to you, dear listener? Are you band dad?
Are you the dad?
And I think if you're listening to the show, it's probably because you are band dad.
Yes. Our listener demographic has been very much just the people that are looking for that insight from others.
Yes.
From what I gather.
Yes.
And one of the biggest issues that myself as band dad, self-proclaimed TM, has been how often do I need to just check in and just see how the dynamic is going, how the well-being is of the individuals, and is everyone still on the same page?
Yeah. Because, I mean, like, you use a very important word there, their well-being. And I guess we can call it their mental well-being.
Yes.
Because life is tough. And each person has their struggles and their demons to face and their battles each day, which has nothing to do with band life.
No.
And sometimes it's easily apparent, if you're paying attention, that someone's arriving at band practice just not looking motivated or on fire.
Or tired as hell from work. Yeah.
And it's easy to assume, it's not my problem, I'm just here to do my part. But as band dad, it's like you kind of have this unspoken duty, as you have this unspoken position of band dad. You then also have this unspoken duty to often just actually check in with individuals who look like they're not thriving.
Not thriving, or just not with the energy that is required in order to be, conducive in a band environment.
Yeah. So I would think, if you do feel that you are band dad role, or in some other terms, perhaps you want to be more of the glue that holds it all together. Because let's face it, if people aren't giving a shit about each other, like this thing's going to fall apart and it's going to lose momentum. And, one thing I've noticed about band life in all the years I've been doing it and the number of bands I've been doing it with is that momentum is a key factor. When you lose momentum, everybody's life quickly fills up with other things that used to be used for band time. And to reclaim that band time is like mission impossible.
Absolutely.
It's about capacity.
Exactly. Capacity is very much a key term when it comes to the individual.
Yeah.
And if they are in a position where capacity is minimum and you can see it, if you are band dad, it is your duty to explore and sort of discuss and understand what is happening with that individual. And if they aren't able to open up, you need to find other ways to sort of gauge what's going on so that a word that you used is to mitigate, any given issue or whatever the case is.
Yes.
And I find a lot of the time, some people are just not willing to open up about certain things because they feel that their band environment is not really part of their personal life.
Yeah.
And you'll find that this particular factor or this particular dynamic exists in bands that have session guys, because session guys, it's a bit different, that's also another discussion for another day. But I mean, if I may just touch on it quickly, like session guys, they're essentially being paid to be there. It's almost like a job,
Like I think they've got a much more pro attitude.
Yes.
And by pro attitude, I mean they don't bring their emotional baggage into the band room space.
Yes.
Which the guys who are there voluntarily often actually do.
Yeah, and in a lot of passion projects and projects that aren't necessarily pro from the word go, are in there basically playing their heart and soul into a project. And it does vary because session guys are not robots. There's also a bit of a dynamic there. I mean, I don't think you and I have a wealth of experience when it comes to session people.
I've got some.
You got some?
Yeah.
All right. Me, maybe not so much. But
sorry, just a little side story. Our session guy made the terrible mistake of actually joining the band when we invited him to do so after a while.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. And like suddenly the like demands on him were like, exponentially more, and he was suddenly not getting paid for it. Like, why did he do that? Why? But maybe he liked us enough. I don't know.
Well, fair enough.
But he started out as a session guy and then turned into.
I've seen that a lot. I've seen where session guys become like, because you spend enough time with a bunch of people, you almost integrate into the culture.
Yeah, and I guess they capture the vision and they want to be more a part of it than just the hired gun.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Yeah, it is cool. And honestly, again, I don't really have a lot of experience with it. But if I were ever in a position where we got a session guy in, from my standpoint, I wouldn't treat them any differently than I would, the guys that are there voluntarily. I feel that a mutual sort of playing field for everybody is very important. Like, if you're not keeping it equal, then other factors can play parts. Like, say for example, you're out for a couple of beers and you're discussing what you're going to do with the new single or whatever the case is, and the session dude's not there because you're paying for his time.
Yeah.
But now you've all had that discussion, and then either you're communicating to him outside of that group, or you're communicating to them on a, like, in the jam room or whatever the case, and there's still a dynamic there missing. Like, if he plays the part that he's paid to play, but he isn't integrated into that culture and into the feel of the project, which I think would be quite challenging.
Then he is just a robot.
Exactly, but I don't feel that that's necessarily I wouldn't say the right way, but I think there are better ways to go about that.
Yeah, granted, but here again, band relationship dynamics, you and your bandmates, apart from the session guy, need to actually be on the same page. Because, I mean, just to talk about when we decided we wanted to work with a session, I mean, I mentioned in a previous episode, our one of our members moved to another country, but that didn't mean that he was out of the band, so to speak.
Yeah.
But we would then, for 3 years, we would actually have him still play on stage with us for select shows.
Yes.
But initially, we could only perform if he was able and willing to come and play a show with us from another country. And after time, we felt, well, this is not cool for us, because I think our internal morale for all the local residents was kind of dropping, because we could feel that our momentum was slowing. So, because we were still rehearsing regularly, but it's like, but for what? Because we can't play shows whenever we feel like playing a show. So to sort of boost the internal morale, we had a discussion about, so what do we still want to achieve? And that's when we collectively decided, okay, we're open to the idea of getting a session guy in so that we can still play. But we all needed to be on board with that decision, because what it meant was that whatever funds we might be getting in from playing a show, for the most part, none of us were going to see any benefit of that, because the bulk of it would go to the session guy.
Yeah.
And if a show didn't turn any results, like financially, I mean, then we would have to pay the session guy. So that was kind of like a band decision.
Yeah.
And we all needed to discuss it intimately.
Yes.
Are we all on board with this? Is it really what we want? Because when it comes to something like money, it's like, I'm not saying that's why we do this, but to play a band costs something.
Yes. I mean, band costs in general are quite hectic.
Yeah. It's an expensive hobby.
Yes.
And it's nice when it turns from an expensive hobby to something that actually produces income.
Yes.
But for the morale, we had to ask ourselves, what is more important to each one of the 4 people who are committed to this week in and week out? And we came to the agreement equally. But what if one person says, no, I don't want to spend on a session. No, I'm not okay with the idea that whatever's coming in is mostly going to someone who's not really a part of this. So these are very important discussions, and the relationship between the guys who are in the thing already comes into play here.
Yeah.
Because you need to respect each other. Someone who's not keen needs to respect that maybe he's a minority opinion. Or if it's a 50-50, it can get very complex, very hard. And I think that's where even band dad can't always find a solution.
Yeah, I've been.
You have to hear every voice in the room.
I've been in band rooms, not necessarily my own, but band rooms where there have been other people that have been almost brand new. And the only reason for my being in that space was to either watch and give feedback, or it's been to do videography or whatever the case was, media. And I have seen dynamics shift almost on a whim, just based on how some members will communicate with each other and the camaraderie there, and then how they then communicate with the session guy. I mean, the session guy looks like he's fitting in and he's having a good old time. Yeah. But you can definitely see the difference between the two. Yeah.
And it's, I mean, like you were saying earlier on that in your mind, it would make sense to integrate that session person almost as if they're not a session. But I think once you find yourself encountered with that experience, that's difficult, because you might be okay with that, but is everyone else in the band feeling the same?
You all got to be on the same page regardless.
Because you might find that someone else or some other people in the band feel, no, but why should that person be integrated at every level of decision making if they're getting more benefit out of this thing than anyone else is, even if just from a financial point of view?
Yeah, then the line does become a bit grey.
Oh, absolutely.
And,
I think that's where, in our case, we actually decided, all right, because our session started to become a bit more integrated on a personal level.
Yeah.
And I think he understood this as well. So when we asked him, how would you feel about actually joining the band? And he was like, well, yeah.
Well,
But then he lost the income.
I was just gonna say, but then he lost the
Yeah.
the session rate.
But like his whole status changed, and but he was actually a good fit. But I think he was with us for almost it was about 2 years as a session. But you do bond with someone over that period of time.
Of course.
And then he decided, he's willing to sacrifice that income to be a part of the thing, which was kind of nice.
Look, that sounds great, but I still want to know how to navigate through the grey area.
Well, I think the grey area navigation. All right, let me put it this way. All right, I've been band dad for a long time, so I've had to think about a lot of this stuff a lot.
Of course.
I'm also in a long-term relationship with my life partner. We finally got married.
Again,
but
congrats,
something I've often said to people who ask, it's like there's two things that I sometimes say, and one of them is like a successful relationship, in my opinion, can only be successful if the word compromise is welcome among all involved parties.
It can be very strenuous on band dad.
But point is, the success of a personal, intimate relationship is compromise.
Absolutely.
Everyone's going to have to be willing to, at least to some extent, give up a little bit of something that for them is difficult to give up.
Yes.
Don't compromise in like you're going to become a slave or someone's bitch.
Yeah, and don't compromise integrity.
Because that's going to make you unhappy as well.
Yes.
And that's going to result in a toxic relationship.
Yes.
So, but if you're finding that like you have to give up everything in order to appease the other party, then they're actually not compromising at all.
Yeah,
it's a two-way street. It's very important.
It feels almost like you have to compromise for the sake of, if I don't, then this person is going to feel this way, and I don't want that.
Yeah.
That's a very tricky business on its own.
Yeah.
I've made a lot of self-sacrifice and a lot of compromises that have put me at a multitude of disadvantages.
But did the other parties involved also?
There were times when they did, and there was times when they didn't.
Yeah, very important question.
The times that they did, things went well.
Yeah.
And it was a collective effort.
Yeah.
The times that they didn't, I took it upon myself as sort of the leader to sort of carry the load when others weren't in capacity.
But that eventually wears you down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
then it's not a successful relationship.
No, not at all. Then it becomes, toxic.
Yeah.
So what I did was to get myself back to a point where, right, I'm not putting so much of myself out there in it where I'm compromising myself. Mainly because I started realizing that if I don't have a sense of self-worth, then what worth does anything I'm involved in have?
Yeah. And now the other sort of like side of that double-edged blade is like, all right, so if you start for your own emotional security, almost like, how do we say, like disinvest yourself from the band so that you don't get hurt too much by the lack of compromise of the other party, but now the band as a whole tends to suffer.
That's usually the sacrifice you have to make, but then a lot of times you have to go back to the drawing board to re-establish a new machine, because it doesn't matter how well-oiled the old machine was. If you're taking away a part from that machine that was, an integral part of its operation, then the machine's going to fall apart,
Well, I think, we were talking, right, in the first episode of this So Far trilogy.
Coming soon.
We might do another.
Maybe.
But, something I was saying, and, we've sort of spoken about this a bit, is to mitigate. So here's the second thing I'll say that I often talk about when we talk about relationships is sometimes you just need to learn to love the shit you hate about that other person.
Yeah.
And that's hard, but sometimes it is possible. And I think that comes to really understanding who they are in their essence.
Yes.
And to say, you know what, I've wrestled this. I realize they're not going to change. And you can kind of trigger some switch in your brain to flick over to the other side and say, you know what, that's actually an endearing quality about that person. Yes, they're stubborn and it grates me. But you know what, it's who they are, and I'm actually learning to be okay with it. Now that's hard.
It is very difficult, yeah.
But if you really want to make something work, and if you really want to mitigate, sometimes that's the only way out.
Sometimes you just got to bite your lip and just be like, nah.
You just kind of have to ask yourself, it's like, can I do that? Do I have the capacity? And sometimes that's what Band Dad is all about. It's growing yourself more than expecting the others to grow. But I guess it really comes back to how badly do you want, you as a person, as that individual, want this thing to continue to exist in the shape and form that it currently exists.
Not necessarily just the shape and form, but just how passionate are you about this?
Yeah.
If you're passionate enough to make a sacrifice, or to, sort of put your pride aside, or whatever it is that is keeping you from seeing the endearing aspect of the individual, you just got to bite that bullet. And if you are passionate enough, you will do that. You will do whatever you can to make it work.
But I think what's also important, because I think you and I, in various aspects of our, let's call it music scene careers, like we've done a lot of that. And truth is, it doesn't always turn out well for ourselves, in terms of our own emotional stability and mental health.
Yes.
So, I think, to those who are listening, maybe you as a listener, you're like, yes, I'm feeling this conversation. Like I've been there, I'm there right now.
Yeah.
You have to ask yourself, how good is this for you? And sometimes being a part of a band feels great, because it satisfies a part of our essence, of who we are and who we see ourselves as. But is the cost of that being high in terms of other parts of our lives? Like, you don't always want to say, I actually have to back away from this thing. Or you don't want to say, like, we were saying one of the things is compromise, where you as the individual has to compromise too much and your bandmates are not willing to compromise even an inch. That will start to cost you dearly. And maybe you're already feeling that.
True.
Then the question is it worth continuing this as it currently is? Do you need to yourself maybe bail?
Take a step back and sort of reanalyze the situation.
Yeah,
I find that...
Or do you take the hard line and start getting someone else out?
No. If you take a step back and you reanalyze and you navigate the problem, address the problem. If addressing the problem in the right way, and I say the right way as in there is a right and a wrong way to address an issue. If you address the issue with integrity intact, the right way, where it's morally not going to damage or...
Can I just add to that?
Sure.
Don't shame an individual in the group context.
No, never.
Speak to them privately if you have a problem with an individual, because shaming them in the group context is not conducive to successful band relationship dynamics.
I don't think, even in like, when you say in the group, I don't think shame is necessarily something I would use. I would say, if you need to bring something,
like calling out.
Yeah, don't call them out in the group, because a lot of times that will affect morale and it'll get ugly.
Yeah, and they'll make them feel attacked and cornered, because now suddenly they realize, it's not only you that feels that way. Yeah.
But I mean, you do get times in the heat of the moment where you do lose it a bit. But I mean, it's your responsibility as the leader to not do that and to be more professional about it. And yes, I know I've said previously that, communication should be a collective thing, a group thing. But if there are special cases and specific incidents where there is a problem and the problem has been picked up, maybe not just by you, but some of the other individuals as well, then yes, pulling someone aside and just chatting to them and just finding out where they're at. Like, not necessarily going straight for the problem, just being like, is everything okay? Like, what's going on with this? What's going on with that? And you can sort of gauge from there where this could potentially be coming from. And it's very important to sort of take a gradual approach, then just go straight for the jugular, because again, you get to that point where people then feel attacked, even if you're coming from a good place. Doesn't matter. They still feel like, oh shit. And if they are naturally introverted about a lot of that kind of stuff, then they just shut off completely, and then it becomes more problematic. So your approach is very, very, very important.
Well, tell you what, we're actually at the end of our time for today.
No, we're not. We're never at the end of our time. It's a lie.
Well, I think, something I feel we should actually talk about at maybe a bit of length. Maybe you disagree, but I think, all right, so we're assuming that you as the listener is maybe band dad, but like, what if you're not? What if you're in a difficult situation and you are one of the more introverted? What if you're looking for a way to deal with something where well, I guess it comes down to this, is like, how do you know where you fit in? What is your role actually? Are you band dad, or are you subservient to someone else's status as band dad?
Yes.
So how would you feel about chatting about that next week?
Well, I haven't really got much experience on that topic.
I do.
Well, there we go. And you're going to be educating my ass and the audience.
Cool.
Fantastic. Cool. So, well, with that said, thank you so much for listening, guys, once again. And feel free to check out Blended Audio, Blended Podcasts, all the blended good shit. And don't forget to listen to more SoundVaaibs. You can go back and listen to all the other episodes, because I promise they do not get old. They do not age with time. Yeah. They are always relevant. Sometimes. And please send us your feedback and just tell us what you want to hear, what topics you want us to discuss, because we're here for you. Man. We're here for you, man. Yeah. We're here to talk about what wants to be heard. So anyway, thank you guys, and we'll catch you the next episode. This has been SoundVaaibs, Paddy McD, the NATE. We'll see you. We won't see you. We might see you.
Ciao, ciao.
Thank you so much for listening to us ramble on about all things music and sound here on SoundVaaibs, produced with the generous assistance of Blended Podcasts, brought to you by Blended Audio.